Hey there, I'm Ty, and I'm talking to you here from my garden in southwest Portland. And what I wanted to talk today is to young accountants who are young in their career, not necessarily young in age, but young in their career, those who are coming out of school, or maybe they're in the first few years of their careers, and particularly the kind of accountants that I end up working with, which are the kind of the entrepreneurial accountants, the ones that are working for entrepreneurs or for growth organizations and wearing many hats. And I want to my hat's off to you, first of all, because I think you're doing the right things in terms of wearing many hats. And what I'm going to talk about is why I think that that is the path and that is the future for our profession. I think that we're entering an era of accounting superstars, which sounds cool if you're an accountant or studied accounting, but it's not necessarily as cool as it sounds or as great as it sounds, because what I mean by accounting superstars is that we're entering an era where there is a much more narrow range of abilities that will be able to get work in the accounting profession or doing accounting-like work in the long run. And so if you kind of look at I'll just give you my overall perspective or my overall view of accounting work and in the accounting industry. It's historically been a pretty wide range in the sense that you can have people who do a lot of data entry work, who do something related to the accounting function, but don't really understand accounting in detail. And many of you watching this may kind of find that hard to believe. It's like, oh, well, I do something accounting related, but of course I understand what I'm doing. I understand accounting in detail. But I think many of my colleagues would agree that they see this all the time, that there's lots of people churning numbers out there that don't really know accounting that well, but they're in an accounting function. And the skill set and the breadth or depth of people's knowledge ideally is commensurate, or I should say it the other way. Pay, compensation, and career opportunities are commiserate with the breadth and depth of people's knowledge. And I find that mostly to be true in the sense that we've got accountants who can make barely $30,000 a year, or people in an accounting-like function who barely make $30,000 a year, and you've got people in an accounting-like function or more of a finance accounting hybrid function at the high end that could be making $200,000, maybe even $300,000 a year in some markets. And of course, if you're working for really large companies in the executive ranks, or maybe you're a partner at a very large accounting firm or something of that nature, then maybe it's even more money, right? But the whole point with that is that there's this huge range right now of the kinds of work that you could be doing and what the commensurate pay is. And I think that range is going to narrow. And I think this is the result of technology and how technology is going to take on a lot of the clerical type work, and that's going to push people who were doing accounting like work to upgrade their skills and do more of a different kind of work, more analytical type work perhaps. And it's going to narrow that range of what people are doing, and it's going to make it more competitive. And that's why I say then it becomes the era of superstars, because I think we're going to have a much more narrow field of the manpower needed for accounting. It's going to be focused mostly on things that are analytical in nature, that are system oriented, that are really kind of knowing or interpreting complex rules. So in the compliance zone, I think there'll still be needs, but it's more on that planning and interpretation side than it is on just filling in boxes, for example. And the result of that is what a lot of technologists, when you read technologists in various books that are looking at various industries that are being affected by technology and AI, one of the potential results and where I kind of see this happening in our industry is a for lack of a better phrase, a winner takes all scenario where you have really super knowledgeable accountants, super knowledgeable folks who know a lot about systems, they know a lot about tax laws, they know a lot about accounting standards, they know a lot about financial theory, they know about operations. And these folks, and that's why I kind of started this kind of praising the entrepreneurial accountants, the ones working with growth organizations that are wearing many hats, because I think it's those folks that are able to cover that field with good analysis and understanding across multiple disciplines that are ultimately going to be the only survivors. That as this shakes out, we will have fewer accountants that are more highly skilled, and and we can debate whether that's good for the economy or good for society, or what that means, when you take that kind of scenario and you put it across other professions. But I see it coming, and so I'm telling my colleagues who are young in the industry, who are young in the profession, and like I said, the people coming out of school, be more. Don't come out and say, okay, I'm going to follow the path that the people have been following for the last 30 years. I'm going to become an auditor, or I'm going to become a tax preparer, or I'm going to do this one narrow thing, because I think that your best bet is to become very knowledgeable about a wider variety of things and really focus on the tasks that are, like I mentioned before, analytical in nature. And I struggle with even advising that, because it's hard for me to envision. I can envision, I always tell when I talk to people in accounting firms about the future and what this could mean to their practices, and why they need to focus more on going towards a consulting business and less into a compliance business. One of the statements one of the things that I point out, that I like to repeat over and over again, and I think that I think sums it up well, is that as accountants, we're often trying to standardize things. We're trying to make things more efficient. We're trying to come up with a really good process that allows us to plug a new person in and do the same thing in the same way that the last person did, and so that we have a very efficient, standardized, well-running machine. We analogize sometimes our work in accounting. We have analogized our work in accounting when we're working in compliance to manufacturing operations, and there's even people who are promoting this now. They promote the whole idea of using Lean Six Sigma thinking to their accounting operations, and I think that's perfectly appropriate if what you're doing is a compliance function. But here's the thing, right? And this is the thing I was telling you that I say over and over again to people who in the accounting firm business. If what you're doing, if you're looking at what you're doing, you're saying, hey, we're going to rock it next year because we figured out a way to standardize the process and make it super efficient. It'll be, we'll all be doing it the same way, and that's going to cut our costs, and we're going to use software to make things easier for us, and so on, right? It's all about this standardization process, efficiency, and we're going to rock it on those components and make a ton of money coming up. That's how we're going to drive this business. If the work you're doing could be standardized, turned into a process, and create this kind of efficiency, that's the surest sign that you shouldn't be doing that work in the long run. Because if you think you're going to outrun machines and artificial intelligence and standardizing things and having good processes and being efficient at doing the same thing over and over again, I'm sorry, that's just crazy. You are Paul Bunyan, is what's going on here. And I see some of it still happening with firms that still do a lot of individual tax preparation, for example. But the firms that are kind of sitting back and saying, well, we do business tax returns, so we're okay. Well, not for long. It's going to come your way too, right? So, and it's going to come the way of audits, right? They've been applying machine learning and machine AI technology to see how they could do some audit work, and also how they could do some of the compliance work for public companies in terms of writing certain disclosures and things like that. So this is what's on the verge. And I guess my message then, and what I'm saying to the younger accountants, those, again, not young in age necessarily, but young in their careers, is be more and do more. Learn as much as you can about a variety of different things that accountants are thought to know about, whether it's taxes or financial accounting or financial theory or capital markets or banking or any of those things that you can use to add value to both your career and to your organizations. And in the process of being more, what I'm basically advising is become one of those stars. Because if I'm right about this, that we start to become an industry that is basically a bunch of stars and then other people who just don't make a whole lot of money and don't have very viable careers. You want to be on that end. You know, there's going to be room for you. There's going to be a lot of stars needed, but the skill set and the things that people will be doing are going to be the things that we often think of our industry as being the higher level people, the ones who are the eggheads, or the people who do more complicated work. I know in my career that I've had a bigger variety and a bigger depth, or bigger breadth, I should say. I've been able to go both wide and deep in kind of very diverse areas, and part of it was because I both practiced in public accounting and I taught at the universities for so many years, that I was able to kind of tackle it from both angles, both practice and theory, for a very long time, and that was an unusual mix for a lot of people. So I'm particularly I feel like I have some insight to this because I know what that's like to have a breadth and a reasonable amount of depth in a lot of different areas, that you can actually add value in multiple areas. And our industry hasn't really thought of that as being possible, but what I'm seeing is that it's going to be not only possible but necessary in the long run. You know, I don't know the future. I'm not saying that I know for a fact this is how it's going to go. I just see this as, I see it in the literature of technologists who know more than I do, and I see it in, I'm starting to see some signs of it when I'm working in a consulting capacity, and when I'm talking to the business community and the accounting community. I'm starting to see some signs of this kind of thing. So be aware of it, and that's what I hope for you as an accountant young in your career. And you know, let's do this together. Let's all move ourselves to that superstar accountant category, so that we can continue to have great careers and be among those that will then have a highly valued skill set with great compensation that feeds a great lifestyle.